This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Ash Seddeek, who is the founder of Intelligent Context AI, the communication intelligence platform built to transform how organizations communicate, align, and lead. As a strategic communications advisor and masterclass facilitator, Ash has coached senior leaders at the top-tier companies, including Cisco, Uber, Google, Lyft, Salesforce, and Oracle. His work spans from boardroom storytelling and executive presence to enterprise-wide transformation messaging. Ash's passion for solving the communication disconnect across organizations stems from decades of hands-on leadership experience. As a consulting practice manager at Oracle, a sales enablement leader at Cisco, and now as a coach helping leaders close the gap between strategic intent and execution clarity. He is the creator of the 7 top skills of highly effective strategic leaders and Own It, Win It, Crush It Successful Blueprint, frameworks that empower leaders to become high-impact communicators who drive results. Ash founded Intelligent Context AI to bring these principles to scale, building a platform that helps professionals at every level communicate with intelligence, align with purpose, and lead with clarity. His vision to equip leaders and teams with real-time tools that elevate performance, foster innovation, and fuel enterprise growth through better communication. Ash serves as the Chief Excitement Officer at the Executive Greatness Institute and is a certified StandOut and Marshall Goldsmith leadership coach. So Ash, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Steve.
So give us a little context. I know you're based in Northern California, but tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you kind of came into the business world and how you got to this coaching that you're doing now.
Absolutely. So I am close to Sacramento. I live in a town called Elk Grove, California. We came up from the Bay Area after living and working in high tech for many years, and now there are quite a few people here in Elk Grove, California, that have sort of moved from the Bay Area up here. But I came all the way from Egypt on a Fulbright scholarship years ago in order to become an applied linguistics professor back in Egypt, where I come from.
Okay.
And then, definitely found out that whether in the US or in Egypt, university professors don't get paid that much. So I ended up
Yeah.
shifting to the corporate world, and the teaching and teaching assistance roles that essentially kind of mapped into corporate training roles. And I ended up working at Schwab for some time, Deloitte for some time, and then realized that I'm basically coming full circle to this idea of how do we use language to communicate. In the very beginning, it was about how to use language in order to learn and get more people to learn and speak English. And now it's really more about the heart of the message that we're trying to get across. So
Yeah.
that's really how it kind of came back full circle to the value of the language that we use, the words that we choose to get the message across.
I'm so excited to have you on the program today. I'm a huge believer that language really matters and how you say things and who you're speaking to, their personality types and what resonates with them and all that kind of thing
Absolutely.
is really important. So, from your perspective, what do you think is the most overlooked thing of that businesses do in this communication with employees?
I think a lot of the time, what we miss out on is remembering the audience. I think a lot of the time we are so wrapped up in the message itself, or maybe in what we want to accomplish or what we're thinking about, that we lose sight of communicating, bearing in mind the top questions in the audience's mind. And that's when we look at marketers. Marketers do this so well because they understand they have to speak to the customer's pain points or what the customer is looking to do. A lot of time in organizations, a lot of people are so wrapped up in the message but
Yeah,
not so
good
much
point.
to the audience itself. And that's
And
what I try
and
to help my clients remember.
and it may be somewhat obvious, but what happens when you don't do that? What are the consequences?
A lot of the time, it gets sent, but doesn't get received. It doesn't get understood. And that's really where in high tech circles, we use the idea of the network, where you're sending some information over the network, but if the network itself does not receive the information on the other side, then what good is that to send anything over the network? So similarly, I think a very important thing for us to remember is our goal is to make the other person on the other side understand. And for that understanding to happen, it has to happen based on a level of clarity as well as a quality of that clarity that helps the other person feel like what Steve told me is something I can count on, or what Ash is telling me is something that I can count on and can take decision on. So we start to see that with clarity over time, and people getting understanding from our message, they actually start to build trust in the sender. And when they build trust in the sender, they have more trust in the message.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
fascinating speed that happens as a result.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you've coached leaders, as we heard in the bio, from at Cisco and Uber and Google. And when you think of the most effective communicators in those organizations and people you've worked with, what is it that they do? What do they have that you see that others lack?
I think the key component that we usually would work on is the idea of understanding who are the key stakeholders that we work with and getting closer to that audience, going and literally asking them, "Hey, I send you all this stuff every Monday. Do you actually read it?
Yeah.
Do I need to change it in any way? Do I need to just send you an email with a few bullet points?" So getting closer to their audiences, of course, is one of the key success factors that a lot of them will have is understand that this is not about me anymore. It's about how effectively I can get the message across to others and they can do whatever they need to do with it.
And so when I send out that communication as a leader, I have to know the person I'm sending it to and use language that resonates with them. For instance, if you're a real data-driven person, I need those facts and figures in there. If
Absolutely.
you're more of a feel type person, I need to show you that I care and that there's some compassion in that message. If I'm sending to an entire group, with multiple personalities, I may have to say the same thing in four different ways so that it hits all. Is that what you're talking about, kind of?
Absolutely. And you just described the Mivante software that we're building is exactly this idea. I realize that it's not something that everybody does, this idea of going around and finding out how does Steve like to receive messages from me? Is he a
Mhm.
data-driven person or does he like me to start with a story? So the software asks every person that comes to use the software to start by first telling the software how they like to be communicated to. And then when Steve or Ash is writing a message, they actually see a widget that tells them, by the way, it looks like you're writing a message to Sandy. Here is how you want to communicate with Sandy. So it will actually expose those preferences as a helpful hand as you are writing the message. And then, of course, AI will also step in because it will know a lot of the context between you and Sandy, and it might actually help craft the message that would be right on target, on point, and draft it in a way that Sandy will understand. So it's fascinating how now with existing tools, there's so much potential for closing the gap that is very challenging for all of us, sort of knowing what would this other person resonate with, and hopefully that will help us create more effective messages.
This sounds fantastic. So you are the designer of Mivante, this AI-driven software.
It was definitely born out of just what you and I were just talking about, realizing, oh my goodness, if we can get the soft to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic because
Yeah.
that's holy cow, you might be putting me out of business. I spend a lot of time with my clients teaching them how to do that. But
It would be a
so
helpful tool.
So tell me how you would use that tool. So let's say that, you explained it a little bit, but I'm going to send a message to Ash. I know Ash's personality type is he likes this information more than this, and so I'm going to do that. and then it just so I get that back then as a leader before I send it to you or before I communicate it to you. What do I do then? Do I edit it? Do I put in my own touches? Tell us how that would work.
Absolutely. So the beauty of it is now AI can actually gather a lot of the information that exists between Ash and Steve because it's all in the system, the emails, the text messages, the meeting transcripts. With that information, it can actually, number one, of course, it will show you on the screen, these are the following communication preferences for Ash. So it will say, this guy likes bullet points. He likes you to start with the top executive summary first before you get into the details. So it will actually show you that on the widget on the right-hand side. And
Hmm.
then as you're looking at that email body, it has a button that says, hey, would you like me to show you, give you a draft? Given that the fact that I know you're sending a message to Ash and you're talking about Q4 budget, it will use the information that it has to craft the draft of the email itself. So you can review it. You might want to make some changes to it and hit send. Or at a minimum, as soon as you type Ash's name in the email box, that's the recipient, it will show you the communication preferences. That at a minimum is going to give you a sense of, oh, I know what this person is looking for.
That that's a game changer. I mean, if you look at, Chat GPT or you look at Copilot or whatever, they can do that, but I'm not sure they consider that personal aspect of that exact individual you're sending it
They don't have it. They don't have it exactly. So that's why in our case, we will actually ask you when you sign up to use the software, hey, Steve, who are the people that you work with? And if you're working in company ABC, we already have an employee directory. So you'll be able to pick and choose the 5 people, and then we'll basically then say, great, now we know who they are. And then we'll say, okay, Steve, you yourself, how would you like to be communicated to? And you might say, I am analytical, I like data, da 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 da. So we'll store all of that into a preferences library. Then every time you start sending a message to somebody, we'll show you that person's preferences. They writing something to you, they will actually see your preferences. So to your point, it's definitely luckily we can do that inside companies.
That's amazing. So, is this a product that I buy? How does that work? So let's say that I'm a leader or I want this in my company for us to use to communicate better. Is there a subscription? Is it a royalty? How does it work?
Yeah, it will definitely be a subscription. And to be honest, right now we are in the process of getting a list of early adopters, a few companies that will use the software
Okay.
out of the gate. We were spending so much time getting some of the patents submitted just because of the pace of how things are moving.
Yeah.
But definitely, yes, it will be a subscription-based model. And let's say a small business, 500 people, X number of users per month. But definitely, the value is incredible in the sense that when we talk about communication, coming back to what we were saying earlier, sending the message over is potentially maybe 2% of the battle.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bigger battle is it drafted in a way that they will actually grasp and understand what's the cognitive burden of that person receiving my message. A CEO does not have the time of day as a technical team member would have. So I
Yeah.
so the system has to give us that intelligence, which is available for us to use, especially in an AI world, we can definitely activate those things.
Well, and then again, this is the comment we hear all the time about AI. Is this going to take my job or is this going to do something that will, but from my perspective, that's just a communicate, it's a written communication. So I still need to understand that formula. I don't know if that's the right word, but that approach maybe of
Yeah.
how to do that because there's going to be a lot of times when I'm speaking to that individual off on the fly, off the cuff, face to face, that I don't have time to ask my AI
Yeah.
partner how to do that. So I still need to learn the process because this is, as you said, just a tool. It doesn't take over everything.
Absolutely. And that's a great point because I think when you visualize that directory in that software, you go and you basically look Steve's profile up, and it will show you his name, his title, and it will tell you the communication preferences. So
Yes.
we've for so long we've had these employee directories in companies. They have gotten to the point where they capture some experience and skills, but I think we needed something that we ourselves can use. And I think the communication preferences will be such a breath of fresh air for us to go and look at the directory and see, oh my goodness, now I know what Steve likes. So as I'm writing for Steve, I need to adjust my message in a way that I think will resonate with him a whole lot more. So now the directory will be a whole lot useful tool.
It's interesting because I've had clients ask me, say they're going to send out a message to their entire company, and it may be a little controversial, and they can't get everybody in the same room to do it at once, so that it needs to be a written form. And then how do you present it? And so I've helped them write basically saying the same thing in four different ways
Yeah.
so that your personality would get it, my personality would get it, this person, and so it does it in a different way. So I think again, this is something that I'm excited about because I think it will help a lot with that. Because in the past, as a leader, we often make the mistake by saying, "Well, here's my message. It's as clear as day to me." And
Yeah.
then three-quarters of the
Yes.
people don't get it, and you're like, "What? I made it as clear as possible. How could you not get it?" Well, it's because they read it in a different way.
Yeah, totally. And I love what you said because one of the interesting things again about using AI, we're also able to tell the whole platform this company is in a startup stage. So given the cycle of the business that it's in, they might be in an environment where they just want things very concise, very crisp, because the speed of action is so much faster than, let's say, an established company where there's more compliance, there are more rules. So there's another superordinate organizing factor that helps us understand how do we also bear in mind the stage that the company is in. We're also able to tell the platform what are the top 3 or 5 strategic priorities that the company has. And we can also infuse that in the recommendations that we give the users. And you just made the point, the audience is usually very diverse. And in that case, to your point, then the software has to basically say, bear in mind, you have people with different communication preferences. So
Mhm.
definitely what you said is right, spot on, because if I'm sending the message to a group of people, highly likely I have that diversity in styles. So I have to
Mhm.
bear that in mind as I craft the message. So it absolutely makes sense. So a lot of exciting things, and I think it's all about kind of reining it in and thinking about the value is the key thing.
Well, as we discussed, I think we can agree that we're both huge believers in language.
Yes.
And in that language piece, I just had somebody on just in the last episode that basically comes out of the HR world. And there's so much bias about what HR means. Some people think it means compliance. Some people think it means take care of your people. Some people think it means this. So a lot of times the word HR director, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I'm leading up to my next question, which is,
Sure.
I love what inspired you to come up with Chief Excitement Officer concept. What are you trying to do there? And that's a language thing, giving somebody some feel for what that is.
Great question. And it basically got born when I was working at Cisco. A lot of the time, we were working on the global sales conference that happens every year. And I realized as I was working as the content strategy manager on this big conference that typically is attended by 20,000 people, that the most important thing for Cisco on an annual basis is not necessarily to tell everybody what our strategy is or how much money we're going to be making next year or what the next innovations are going to be, but only if they can actually get them excited about the prospects of the company in the following year. So, this idea of creating that excitement within each of the individuals was an interesting idea that resonated with me so much that we also saw that in order for you to achieve that as a speaker in that conference, you yourself have to already be excited about what that future is.
Mhm.
So a lot of these speakers that did so well, when they got on the stage, they were already fired up because we can see that a lot of leaders have this ability of traveling to the future. They can go to the promised land, they can see how things would be, and then they come back to November 2025 and say, You guys, I can't wait for you to get there because I went and I saw it. It's amazing." So this brings us to the idea that leaders need to bring energy into the organization. They are the ones that hopefully have a clear idea what the vision is, where we're going to be going next year as a company, how much more we're going to be able to accomplish. And with that excitement, you hope that they're going to walk in the company kind of carrying that excitement and hopefully able to impart that to others. And of course, being reasonable sometimes when there are risks or there are issues to say, hey guys, even though I'm excited about the future, I know there are some challenges in front of us. And I want us to be conscious of that, and I want to talk with you about how do we get those challenges out of the way because I see where we can be, but definitely we have some risks ahead of us that we have to handle.
So share with us a little bit about too. In the bio, we heard that you developed the 7 skills of highly effective strategic leaders. So I'm sure we could fill up an entire program with all that and look at everything as
Yeah.
well. But just kind of give us a summary of what that is and what you're trying to accomplish with that framework.
Absolutely. So we did find out when I started coaching a lot of leaders, we did find out that very typical, of course, all of us are in an environment where, you ask the leader, how was your day? And he says, oh, I was on calls, back-to-back calls all day long. And when you look at the research from Harvard Business and you find out that barely any CEO takes time off, which is crazy. And I don't know what your experience has been where you feel like, oh, there's so much work for us to do. We have to travel to Chicago, we have to go to New York. So this idea of not taking time to think about the business is one of the most scary aspect of being in a leadership position where what you do impacts a lot.
Yeah.
So we see that the 7 practices of highly effective strategic leaders, the very first practice is one about taking time to reflect.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and that's really where a lot of leaders, when it does happen, they feel so excited and energized because they just had a moment to sit down, maybe grab a cup of coffee and think for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of this whole journey of if you want to be strategic, we're going to have to start with taking time out of the game and thinking about the game.
I love that. When I took my job as the CEO of a company, my predecessor, I remember the last day that I was talking with him, he was on the job, and I said, "So what should I do?" As a mentor, I was asking him, "What do you think I should do?" And he says, "Well, this sounds really weird, but you have to take time to think." Because it's
Mhm.
so action, 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 do, 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 and you just need to say. He says, and if you're sitting at your desk doing that, people think you're dozing off or just in la la land. But he says it's important to take some time to think because and
Amazing.
and
Yeah.
and then reflect on that as well.
Absolutely. Because then that's what, when you give yourself time to think, and you might be inspired by an idea, you have a reflection, and then all of a sudden you have a different way of thinking about something. And then you go to the rest of the leadership team and say, I want to run something by you. And you start that strategic conversation to happen by virtue of the fact that you really initiated it yourself.
Mm,
And that's really where it starts. Eventually, within the 7 practices, we talk about creating tension, where there's always a tension between where we are and where we need to be, and then helping everybody see that we've been there before. We can definitely cross that bridge. So, as a leader, you see yourself evangelizing a lot about something that does not exist yet because people cannot see it. So, we do talk within those 7 practices to the leadership mandate to be the person that's talking about the vision, that's helping people understand what it might look like, realizing that that also will create a lot of tension and change.
yeah, yeah. That's perfect. Another thing that I thought was really interesting too was in the introduction to this podcast, I say that I identify as a storyteller, so that really relates to me. Now, you actually do some storytelling coaching, so I'd love to hear what you think leaders should be in the storytelling realm, and can you coach somebody to become a great storyteller?
I am seeing that you can.
Yeah,
So that's like so luckily most of us were raised around stories. We have family stories, we have growing up stories, we have stories that of movies that we've watched or stories of other people that we've heard. So what I help leaders do is I help them at least think about the simplest of stories that might have happened in their life, and then come back and say, let's actually use that as a metaphor. It could be a bike that they got when they were children, or their very first car. And we basically start saying, let's just imagine what it would be like if somebody came over to you and said, I want the keys for that car. The car that you spent so much money on, it's sitting in the garage, you've got the best hubcaps. It's one of those, it's your love story. It's the car that you don't want anybody to touch. And now they want to take the keys away. How would you feel? And then we go through that conversation. And then we come back to leadership transitions. And I basically tell them, you transitioning from a manager to a director role is similar to you giving up a car that you spent so much money on. And now somebody else wants to take the keys. But in order for us to be able to make the transition, we have to give up one car, and it's okay if a few months from now you say to me, Ash, let's go get another one. And yes, we can go get another one. And then we talk about what kind of car it is. It's a car where you don't have to grind as much as you might have had to do as a person. Now you need to work through more people. And as you develop them and help them grow, you're helping them get even better because they will be even more valuable for themselves and the organizations that they work with. So we use it as a way to help people see how they themselves can then take these stories and use them themselves as they talk to their teams. Because a lot of the time, it's a beautiful way to help people connect the dots.
It's interesting. I was just talking the other day to somebody about this, and if you think of people telling stories, you can look at the people that don't do it very well. So on one side of it, you have somebody that goes through it too fast and doesn't give enough details, and the whole time you're thinking, well, wait, what about this, and what happened here? You don't get the whole story. Then you look at the other side of the scale, and you have somebody that goes on and on and on and says the same thing over and over again. You're like, get to the point. This
Get
is
to the
ridiculous.
point.
So and then there's cadence in a story, and there's pausing at the right place, in a story and whatever. So those are things that probably can be taught, right?
It does take a lot of practice, and I love what you're saying because in the business world, of course, we want to get to the point. We want to cross the bridge. We want to understand how is the story relevant to where we are today as a team, as a company. So I definitely, to your point, I definitely work with them on this idea. How do we shift? How do we pivot from the story we are telling to the lesson that we want to communicate to our audience? And you're totally right. I think it's something that has to be very carefully crafted in order for us to do it within a specific amount of time.
I love what you said too, is you have to be able to paint the picture of what it's like at the end, what it could be, because with change, there's fear, they don't want to change, they can't always see it. So as a leader, if you can say, here's what it looks like, and here's what it would be like, and if you can paint that picture vivid enough to where they can actually see it and embrace it, obviously you'd have a much better chance of getting there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it gets better over time. I'm sure you've seen that happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In doing a little research for this, I did run across something you said somewhere else where you talked about, like measuring communication intelligence in a business. So, how can we measure communication intelligence? How do we know that the way that we're communicating is working? Obviously, if you're hitting on all cylinders and you're meeting all your goals and whatever, you probably are, but that's an assumption. So, how do we measure that we're getting across to people in effective ways?
When the work I'm doing right now at Cisco, we're finding out that there is a fundamental equation. It's almost like a mathematical equation between clarity and the speed with which we're getting our work done. And of course, in a lot of organizations, the idea of speed is very important because there's so much competition. Everyone else wants to eat your lunch. So the faster you can get to market with an innovation that's important enough, differentiated enough, the more likely that you will be ahead of a lot of other people. So we come back to the idea of intelligence. And we really centered around making sure that the quality of the message that we send has a very high level of clarity, that people can understand it so quickly that they can take the next step. So if we can take that nucleus of an idea, and every time we're just about to send a message, we focus more on making sure it's very clear. People will get the point we want. They understand exactly what we're asking them to do. If we can impact that, we're finding that it can actually have 400% ROI, because if Ash sends Steve a message, Steve gets it as soon as he looks at it, he knows exactly what's going on. He's able to take action. And then he sends the message to Sandy. Sandy's able to take action. She can see the multiplier and domino effect of clarity as it happens every step of the way. Whereas if clarity doesn't happen, when Ash sends message to Steve, Steve looks at the message, says, you know what, I don't get what he's trying to say. Let me let me see if I can text him. Let's just imagine that it takes about 24 hours between the time you get to me, I explain, finally get it. Now you're sending the message to Sandy. It took us 24 hours. That same 24 hours, again, think about the multiplied effect of that downstream. So that's really where organizations that have a very high level of intelligence will start with a level of clarity at every step of the way. And that's the part of the work that I'm doing now at Cisco, is helping them clarify more and more of their messages.
Which totally makes sense. Clarity, you're going to get there if everyone understands what it is. It's very clear. But can you actually measure it? Can you say that, for instance, I'm envisioning you're looking at your KPI list for the month, and is there some measurement that says, oh, we were here last month and now we're here, so we're improving in that category? Is there a key performance indicator that would measure that?
I think you can definitely get to it. One of the interesting comments one of the people at Cisco made, he said, I used to send this email every Thursday. And for the last 3 months, I don't remember anybody responding.
Hmm.
And just last week, I sent it and I got two responses back. People are interested in what we're working on. They want to have a conversation. And he was blown away by how come all these months I never got a response? And all he did was he basically made sure that his message had a couple of sentences at the very top that had an executive summary with very clear messaging at the very top, which
Hmm.
made it possible, hopefully, for those two individuals to get what he was talking about and see a response. I think in the same manner that marketers are counting open rates, in organizations, we need to look at response rates, response timing, and how relevant the response is to the message that was being sent, and whether or not it helps us move forward. So, to your point, I think we can definitely get there by identifying a number of KPIs. And then, if the software itself that we're using can help us rate the messages, and that's what we're doing at Intelligent Context AI, we're giving the users an opportunity to say, this message did help me improve, or this message was right on point. So measuring and getting almost like a rating system internally will also be something that's very much needed, because I agree with you. ROI is key here.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about better communication and how that accelerates, innovation and improves decision making, in a company?
So as we have seen, as I was trying to describe, it's almost like a you're standing at a coffee shop, and somebody's standing talking to the barista, and they spend so much time trying to explain what kind of drink. While they are talking, there's a whole line of people standing.
Yeah,
And we can imagine the impact of this moment not being very efficient, not being very effective, and how much it's impacting everything else. So it's almost like every organization is almost like a number of train carriages that are connected. And the faster each one of those carriages moves, the others will also pick up that same velocity. And that's the intention, where when we impact clarity at Steve's level or Ash's level, and if that clarity then impacts the next train car and the next train car, that's how we can see, at a minimum, we are moving at a faster pace in a good way. We're not rushing, but we are picking up steam and we're picking up momentum. And that momentum, then, whether we're working on an innovation project or helping a customer, we are benefiting from that velocity.
yeah. And what's the link between communication and psychological safety? How should we adjust, things that we say in our messaging with that in mind?
Psychological safety, I would say it's definitely part of being strategic, a strategic communicator in the sense that we're basically telling leaders that you need to send signals as part of your message that you want to hear from everybody else. So it's very environmental focused, where the goal would be to let everybody know that you're open to receiving feedback, you're open to receiving input from different people. So it's more about the environment that the leader has to create herself or himself in order to then make sure that the quality of input is rich and diverse. So, in that case, to your point, Steve, I think leaders need to remember that everything they say, how they say it, the environment they create is going to impact the quality of the communication that happens. And of course, that's going to come back and bite us on the clarity side if we have somebody sitting in the team meeting and they don't speak up, and there is a critical piece of information that really helps us achieve a very high level of clarity, then we are in a very bad situation.
In your experience working with these different leaders in these different companies, can you come up with what do you think the most common communication blind spot is for CEOs and executive level people?
The most common one is the one where they think that number one, of course, they think everybody gets it and that it should be very easy to do because the issue is a lot of the time, if they do listen to what you and I talked about, taking time to reflect, and let's say they come up with some new ideas, unless they realize that as leaders they are constantly leading change, because of course you come back on Monday, you have a new idea, and we think everybody else is going to very quickly move and get it done. But the very wise leaders would realize that whatever idea they introduce, it's going to open up a whole new can of challenges because people are going to see it as change, and we have to think about what's the resistance level, what do we need to do in order to clear out the road for that change to happen. So I think smart leaders and those who have the wisdom of the times would realize that as soon as they say a new idea, they need to follow that up by saying, I understand this will be a form of change and it's going to have a lot of impact. And I want to work with you and the rest of the organization to make this happen in a way that will make it possible for all of us.
We talked earlier about how important it is for a leader to paint the picture and show the future, and this is what it's going to be like. So I'll put you on the spot right now.
Of
So
course.
5 years down the road, my company has been using Mivante, and we're doing great. So what does my organization look like 5 years down the road if I've embraced this software and this communication style? What does my company look like then?
That is a great question. And my hope would be that your product development life cycle is faster and much more enriched because of the fact that people have been able to capitalize on the time savings, the amazing amount of clarity that they have because they know what everybody's communication style is. There's not so much stuff that's getting lost in translation. So with that added clarity and that added understanding, hopefully the products that they're working on are going to be much better products because the clarity has impacted product discovery and innovation, that they're actually able to come up with much better products at a much faster pace, which means you have a high level of satisfaction internally, customers have better products, you have better revenue coming in, and there's definitely a very positive cycle of happiness that's taking place. Because I think right now we are shooting in the dark quite a lot on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We're sending the message, we're praying it lands.
Yeah.
And the software is going to sort of bring to the forefront a lot of those hidden things that we don't know in a helpful way. It's going to basically say, here's what Steve is looking for. Great. I'm going to look at my message. If it's not matching, I'm going to ask the AI, can you actually craft this in a way that Steve would welcome receiving and will get very quickly? And it would immediately use bullet points, will bring the data to the top and the conclusion to the bottom because that's how Steve likes it. My goodness, it's like split second. Amazing. Um,
So let's get a little sci-fi here. So
sure.
I totally get that and totally see how that works when I'm creating a message and sending a message out. What if I'm talking to you one on one? Will there be someday in the future, well, like on my glasses, I'll have a chip or something where it'll say, okay, I'm talking to Ash. He likes this. Don't say that, but say this and help me construct it. Do you see it getting to that level?
I think you're absolutely right. And some of those glasses are available now. So I definitely don't see why not, to your point, that there will be a panel that says, start with the data or make sure you share with him an inspiring story first
Yeah.
because he loves the stories. And I think that, th those key data points are not that much to see, in that kind of glasses. But yes, I think, it's funny you ask that because I started thinking, how can you take this solution and make it more of a consumer-based product? And exactly what you're saying is, can you actually imagine if we're able to do that? That would be fascinating.
I read somewhere just in the last couple days where one of the most common questions put into Chat GPT right now is when my boyfriend says this, what does that mean?
What should I
So
say? Yeah.
it's so obviously that's a communication issue. So
And the
it's
fact that you don't know the communication preferences. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's really interesting. So you said that you grew up in Egypt. Do you get back often?
I go there, I think, almost like once a year, visit family, but definitely have, opened up to seeing other places along the way as well, like going to Turkey or some European spots. But Egypt, of course, continues to be a good spot to go to.
So since you've seen the world and traveled the world and come from a different place, and now you live in the U.S. and you're part of, this, and well, are there cultures that do this better than others, do you think?
I think that is it's magical when you look at, especially here in the US, where you have people from different cultures. And I do believe that it's this the magic is somewhere in the combination thereof. Because you can definitely see, like I was speaking today, someone who is comes from Spanish culture and they have a much more animated speaking style. And we talked about how different it is, let's say within the US, when you hear to someone speaking very fast versus someone who is more poised and slower pace,
Mm.
what the signals are in an American culture. And if we go to the UK, they have their own perceptions of the American accent and the pace of speaking.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of learning happening all the time, but just reflecting and looking at the differences.
Well, it just, there's so many implications that you can see that would be really interesting. I mean, talking with world leaders and trying to talk about peace or try and talk about trade or, whatever you're talking about. And I'm sure this is what ambassadors and people that specialize in that do all the time, is
Yeah.
understanding what the language means and how to use it and what resonates with them and what will offend them. And, so
Yeah, absolutely.
the more you know of that. So if we know that on the international scene, then of course we can say, well, that same thing happens in our day-to-day conversations with our business colleagues. What may offend you doesn't offend me. What may
Yeah.
push your buttons won't push mine, and just understanding that is it just makes so much sense to me.
Absolutely. And that's why I think in that space you find a lot of people who are like you and I talked earlier about linguistics. There's a whole space within linguistics for intercultural communication where they focus more and more on what would make teams from two different countries understand one another. So they do a lot of preparation work, especially in the diplomatic circles.
Mm,
Totally, as you're saying, they have to think about some of those elements. If they do their homework right, they go in with so much preparation. And of course, when it doesn't happen, then you might see some conflict. But no, you're absolutely right. I think we need to hopefully use technology to tell us more about what we're heading into, if we can.
absolutely. Well, Ash, in preparation or anticipation of our discussion today, what haven't I asked or what haven't we touched on that you'd for sure like to get into the program here today?
I think I think coming back to the idea of chief excitement officer, I think if we can leave this thought to everybody listening to us that especially if they are in leadership positions, that to remember that their audiences are counting on them a lot of the time on them bringing a higher level of energy. And of course, that puts so much pressure on leaders. So I love what you said about the advice you got from the former CEO, where
Yeah.
taking time to think. And I think the main idea that we're going to add to that is take time to replenish your energy, because as a leader, that is the top most precious thing that you can give others is when you step into a conversation with people in your company. If you can get them energized about the future, that is step one, is giving them the reason why to even think about communicating clearly.
So looking back over your career, is it a family member or a business leader or colleague who influenced you the most in the storytelling realm? Who was a great storyteller that you just really admired?
I would have to say my dad. He was very skilled at just coming up with jokes that he would make them up. It was fascinating. And of course, that tells you so much about the punchline, and the fact that usually you come into those conversations. Of course, you get a big laugh at the very end. So I loved that coming from him many times, and I appreciate it. And it reminds me of the value of how sometimes storytelling can help break the ice, bring different energy into the room. And that's what I'm really tapping into, is realizing that and telling myself it's feasible. Don't complicate it.
Sure. Well, Ash, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. So that question is in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
The pearl of wisdom would be, make sure you make time to spend time with the key people in your organization one on one. It's interesting. You hear it a lot of the time now. A lot of people tell you, my boss is not having one on one with me. They're not having their staff meeting. I mean, everything is more or less has been put on. We'll do it when we can. If we need anything, just reach out to me. But I think caring enough to spend time with each of the key stakeholders and connecting with them, going and sitting with them, or maybe I see the wine bottles behind you and you're spending some time having a nice drink and having a
Yeah.
conversation. It is something that is sorely needed. And in the pace of the day, a lot of the time, again, we find beautiful excuse. I have been on calls all day. Well, you know what? We want to make sure you have the right calls and that you take time between the calls and that you're actually having conversations with the people that matter the most. And I think that's what I would leave a lot of people with.
Well, and then that just brings us right back to where we started, which is if you don't have those conversations, those one-on-ones, those informal times, you don't get to know your people well enough. And if you don't know them well
Exactly.
enough, then you
Yeah.
can't communicate with the language that resonates with them. So
Right on.
know
Absolutely.
them, it just, yeah, it can't always be over Zoom and it can't always be over a phone. Sometimes you just have to plant yourself in somebody's office or go
Yeah,
have a coffee or whatever it is to really get to know
exactly.
people.
Absolutely. Even if you're going to do a virtual meeting, do a virtual meeting and say, you grab your drink, I'll grab my drink, and we won't have an agenda.
Yeah,
And you know what? That's okay.
that's for sure. Well, Ash, this has been fascinating. Obviously, it's a topic that really resonates with me, so our personalities might be somewhat similar.
Awesome.
And it's just so important because it always comes down, people when they talk about business and success versus, success versus when you don't do well, it comes down to two things. It comes down to people. Everyone says it's the people, and then it's always communication. So the better you can communicate, the more clear you can be with your communication so that we understand each other and that's the holy grail, and it's not that complicated, but yet I'm
Exactly.
fascinated that you're coming with an AI piece of this because I think that'll help a lot of people.
Fingers crossed, definitely. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure.
Well, take care. As I said, it's been fascinating. I've really enjoyed talking with you today. It's a topic I'm excited about. So appreciate you sharing all your wisdom with us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.